D&D 5e has a psionics problem. At least as a player option, psionics are tainted by negative community reactions to the mystic. More on that here. What small portions there are of psionic theming in 5e seem very much an afterthought. This is a game where dragons, magic and demons all exist, and yet there are fewer psionic player options than there are player options that relate to beasts from our real world. World building wise, why would anyone take a tiger to be totemic of survival instincts and jumping, leaping ambush when boulettes exist? Yes, they hunt in different environments, but since totem barbarians are choosing between elk, bears and tigers, which all exist in very different environments, I think environmental consistency is probably the least of a totem barbarian's worries. And yes, I know this can be fixed with theming and flavour. If you want a jungle-themed totem barbarian, you can keep the tiger, but replace some of the others with, say, a Giralian or a Displacer beast. This is not so true with psionic theming. Sure, you can flavour a sorcerer as a psionicist, and the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer will certainly help you with that. But the mechanics don't suit the flavour exceptionally. After all, you're still using verbal, somatic and material components for your spells, whereas psionicists simply use their minds. And certain elements of the psionic fantasy, such as bodily adaptation and telekinesis, feel somewhat janky and unreachable. Nonetheless, it can work, so why do people worry so much about inserting psionic elements into their games? Well, some people say psionics ruin the fantasy of D&D. These are the folks who suggest that D&D works best as a medieval fantasy simulation, running very Tolkien-esque games in very Tolkien-esque worlds. Now, this is certainly one way of playing. These same people have probably already trimmed the monk and the artificer from their games. And I'm not looking to convince these people, although arguably some of the abilities of the Maya can best be described as psychic powers. Now, I'm talking to you, the DM who's uncomfortable with many aspects of psionic theming, except perhaps some of the monastic dedication and meditation virtues. The DM who sees the fiasco of the mystic and thinks, well, of course it didn't work. It doesn't fit in D&D. Or perhaps the DM who sees the mess of the mystic and thinks, oh well, I'm not touching anything related to that with a 10-foot barge pole. Heck, I'm even talking to folks who think that the Psi Warrior makes them a little uncomfortable because it is basically just a D&D Jedi. Unless you're playing a very specific setting with very clear restrictions, D&D is not a pure fantasy game. It incorporates elements from medieval European simulationism, generic fantasy tropes, science fiction, Hong Kong action films, and even a collection of inside jokes from the original creators' table. Heck, one of the most famous adventures ever published for the game, written by Gary Gygax himself, is a dungeon crawl through the intestines of a crashed spaceship. And one of the newest 5e releases contains space hippos and starships powered by the mind. Even Dark Sun, a setting from 2nd edition known for its dark, gritty take on apocalyptic fantasy, has an entire 2nd edition supplement themed around psionic-based surfer dudes. The point is, if you're clutching your pearls about how silly the incorporation of non-traditional fantasy elements into D&D is, you're probably playing the wrong game. 5e is a game where a magical minotaur can join forces with a gnome in a mech suit and go on quests together with their friend who is a sentient ooze who collects people's souls in little trinkets. But here's the point, most D&D settings are kinda wild. Or at least become wild the moment your players decide what they're bringing to the table. However, even in quote-unquote normal games, I find psionics to be a very intriguing world-building and storytelling possibility. Here's why. See, the thing about nearly every D&D game in existence, almost the most universal thing about our hobby, is that the PCs are weird. They have unusual or rare abilities, regularly complete feats that normal people wouldn't even dream of trying, and have specific training or power based upon their learning, their study, or simply their bloodline. To use Star Wars as an analogy, your party is likely filled with the descendants of powerful bloodlines. A noble on the run, a custodian of some great ancient lost power, an accomplished rogue, and the strange animal-looking guy who gets a bunch of weird looks. However, your world is likely filled with the requisite collection of farmers, labourers, builders and merchants that keep society ticking. To become a PC, or take skills in any class, is far beyond their remit, usually. Mentorship by some great druidic sage. Learning about the weave of magic as a bard or a wizard, or training as a battle-hardened warrior. These are out of reach for 99% of people in your D&D world. So simply based on the natural individual desire to be something, when presented with others who have great power, we have two options. We either appeal to some outside entity for help and guidance along our way to give our lives meaning, or we seek to hone our own abilities. In a world where powerful magic visibly exists, I find it very likely that mediums, telepaths, and self-improvement gurus would do a roaring trade, perhaps even better than in our real world. You see, the paths to magical power in D&D involve either magical nepotism, magical training, or magically devoting yourself to something bigger than you, be that Cthulhu or the spirits of nature itself. Psionics are the only system in D&D that allow people to access magic-like power. Psionics are the only system in D&D that allows individuals to access magic-like power no matter who they are or which strange entity is listening. It simply requires a mastery of one's own mind. I can envision small communities of folks working together to try and master their own minds. Be they ascetics in a mountain commune, or a bunch of high society nobles getting together to try and figure out how to do a seance. Perhaps the wandering medium teaches the local youths bits of their psionic training. Or perhaps some grand self-help book is one of the first popular printed materials. Or a specific guru travels the land gaining followers by demonstrating his psionic power. Indeed, perhaps the traditional magical establishment is concerned about this new establishing folk practice. One, because it destabilises their chokehold on magically inspired authority, and two, because their spells can't seem to detect or dismiss it. Maybe the magical academies or entire kingdoms have researchers investigating this growing trend. Perhaps it has a set of critics or detractors who are worried about what this means, linking it to creatures of the Underdark, suggesting that perhaps these are a new form of mind flayer capable of walking among us, hiding in plain sight. Perhaps militaries start trying to adopt psionics as a countermeasure to the grand wizard duels that are taking over battles in your land. As psionics requires no components, there may be no consensus on how to stop it, or even identify which of the myriad soldiers is using it. You see, psionics are already a part of your world. If you're using books like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, or even the Monster Manual, from Sue monsters to aboleths and mind flayers, some of the more terrifying monsters in your world already use psionics. Heck, any PC with a telepathy ability is already engaging in the psionic realm. It makes little sense to deny this powerful storytelling tool a place in your world building, especially when it's already there if you're playing D&D. But how do you incorporate, justify, or mechanically represent the burgeoning psionic powers among some of the people of your world? After all, you probably don't want to bring the Unearthed Arcana Mystic to your table. Probably rightfully so, but what if you did? At least a little. See, the UA Mystic is a huge document, and it has some genuinely brilliant stuff tucked away in those 28 pages. First, this table. A D20 table to generate cool and unique quirks for your psionic NPCs? Yes, please. This will help you build up intriguing characters on the fly. And while it was originally intended for Mystic PC creation, who's to say we can't steal it and use it for some cool NPCs? Great GMs steal, after all. The second thing you should absolutely steal from the Unearthed Arcana Mystic is the talents section. These functioned as cantrips for the original Mystic class, but we're going to use them in a way that their name suggests. These are a list of the talents budding psionicists in your world might have picked up and developed by themselves, ranging from very minor, melding a weapon into their hand so they cannot ever be disarmed, to pretty powerful, emitting blasts of energy from your own body. Perhaps instead of giving some NPCs minor magic through cantrips, you can try mixing it up and giving them some of these instead. Folks who have dedicated themselves to self-improvement and the improvement of their own mind. And if you're worried about psionics being too powerful, maybe just limit it to these talents. Forget the rest of the class. I can guarantee you that your players are going to jump at the ability to see some of these minor psionic talents in action and maybe learn them themselves. I mean, look at how popular the telekinetic feat is. One last thing that you should steal from the Unearthed Arcana Mystic are psionic foci. This is if you want psionics to be super interesting in your world without terribly upsetting the balance of it. Go through the psionic disciplines in this massive document and simply select some of the most interesting psionic focuses that you see. These cost your bonus action to get started, so you focus until you're incapacitated, and you can use these focuses to boost or change your own competencies slightly. What I would suggest is that each psionicist have one psychic focus available to them. Perhaps, if you're worried about balance, psychic focuses even use up concentration. But let me tell you this, when your party encounters a group of guardsmen, yet one of them can inexplicably see through magical darkness, or stabilises one of their guardsman companions with a simple touch, or they meet a farmer famed throughout the local area for being able to pick up any tool and use it perfectly, even being able to read any written language, or perhaps a fisherman who can swim better than everyone else, almost like he has gills, they will be intrigued. Even among the psychic focuses, there are some balance outliers, like one which gives you 5 feet of extra reach. Might be a little strong. Generally these serve to spice up your psionically minded NPCs, and will leave your players questioning, how did they do it? And the moment they start questioning, you've got them hooked on a psionic storyline. Perhaps this kickstarts a quest to find the specific home region where all of these psionic powers seem to originate. Or perhaps they start to uncover a secret conspiracy of psychics working within society. Perhaps your players will start seeking psionic training of their own. And you can bundle a psionic talent, or a cantrip, with one of these psychic foci to make kind of a feat on the fly, tailored to your player's specific hopes, wants, and needs. As I've said, this can very well be the upper limit of psychic powers in your world. Perhaps as militaries and nations scramble to try and understand the upper limit of psychic power, it's eventually discovered that these are simple improvements that people can make self-directed in their own lives. Nothing that is going to rival the power of a wizard, but still a worrisome destabilising effect if enough of the peasantry learns these powers. Or perhaps you can use the Unearthed Arcana Mystic in its entirety as a blueprint for a powerful psionic NPC or villain to put the fear of psionics straight into your players' hearts. How big can this thing go? My only word of advice? It's probably unwise to allow your players to take the Unearthed Arcana Mystic as a one-level multi-class dip. You will probably regret that. If you want to hear more about the Mystic class's history, click here. And if you want to hear more about how to steal from published materials, there's a playlist right here. Drop your thoughts on world building, psionics, and the Mystic in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to let me know you want more videos like this. With that said, I've been Tom, otherwise known as the Grungeon Master, and I'll see you in the next video.